Okay, I am Patrick O'Connell. I work for NAS, for the national office. I'm their technology and training director. This is Chip Quarles. He's our IT guru extraordinaire. He is the guy when it comes to IT for us and for Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife too. I guess you guessed by the title, we're talking about mainly tournament stuff, IT stuff related to tournaments. Hopefully we'll spend a lot of time on it talking about the new app that's been developed. And we'll get started. There are 3 different types of tournaments that we support with our system. The virtual tournament, a land-based tournament, and our newest option is a hybrid. I'm going to go through each one individually. So a virtual tournament, I'm going to spend a little more time on how many people have posted a tournament on our website before, actually gone through that process? All right, so you guys know how it works, right? You go to nastournaments.org, you select the tournament drop-down, do tournament listings, create a new tournament. Then you've got it out there, all the folks sign up for it. Once the tournament's completed, you download the participant download, then you load it into Microsoft. Well, that's for a land-based tournament. So virtual tournament, once they sign up, the kids shoot, the coach takes their scores, they log back into the site and they add their scores, they get processed and they run. Does that make sense? Pretty brief? Okay. For a land-based tournament, same thing, they sign up on site, they post it out there, all the schools sign up for it. Once registration closes, they download the participant download, they load it into a Microsoft Access program called NAS Pro. They print their labels, they're ready for the kids. The kids show up on site that day, they shoot. It's one location, right? Everybody comes to one or 2 locations together with a host. The host scans the cards, processes the scores, upload them, and they finalize their tournament. Okay? Yes?
Before you can start, you're saying it's using Microsoft Access?
If you're using the land-based version, it uses Microsoft Access, right?
The version of the scanner.
Your school doesn't cover that program.
Yeah, you can actually with Microsoft Office 365, you can download a copy for a month for $10.
Okay.
So it's yes.
Is that going to be web-based at some point in time?
Yeah, Chip's going to talk about that later. When we start using the app, that'll be an option. It'll be a web-based only.
And where do we get the scanner from?
You can order the scanner from us, from NAS. It's on our order forms. So the hybrid is kind of a blend of the two. You still have a host. You post it on the website like a land-based tournament, just like you do any other. The only thing you do differently is you post one additional flight, and you can name it virtual or something like that. We found during COVID, anybody else tired of the word COVID at this point? I know I am. So we found this past year that there were a lot of schools that weren't allowed to travel, and they still wanted to participate in tournaments, while other schools could travel. So they hosted a land-based tournament, but they wanted a way for these schools that couldn't travel to still be able to participate. So they registered, if you couldn't travel to the host site, you registered for that virtual flight. Everything else pretty much works the same at that point. They downloaded the stuff for the tournament, they got ready for the tournament. If you're at a virtual location, you couldn't be there, they sent you the kids' names and their shooter numbers. They shot at that location. We created a brand new spreadsheet, formatted spreadsheet. All the outlier side, the site that wasn't local, had to do was open that spreadsheet, key in that kid's shooter number, key in their 30 arrows, save it, email it to the host. There's a new import option for that file for them to import, and then it merges in right with everybody else who's there on site. So that can also be used if you don't have a scanner. You can use that spreadsheet to key it in to import that data there without having to actually have the scanner and the actual scannable scorecards for that. Does that make sense? One of the issues with that is I did some research a while back. It's kind of like if you're keying data that you're familiar with, you're like 97% accurate. There's like a 3% error rate. If it's data you're not familiar with, it drops to like 93%. So if you're keying 31 values in for every single kid, the odds are one of those is going to be wrong. every single time you key one of those in. So that you are definitely more accurate if you're using a scanner. Definitely more accurate using a scanner, especially when you're keying all 30 values at the same time. So
is that hybrid going to be a permanent option?
the hybrid will be a permanent option. That's what I use Texas in an option. Somebody said it takes like 16 hours to drive across Texas or whatever. And some of these schools that participated in NAS are so remote, it is literally hours to get to another location where they could even participate. It gives options for some of those to participate where they would have no other option at all to do it.
And we've had state tournaments doing a hybrid for years. I think Nevada, there were schools that couldn't travel. They would send the scorecards out, let them shoot, send the scorecards back the day of the tournament, and they would include them.
So this just eliminates the need for them having to have those scorecards moving back and forth. So the other slide in this one too, for the use of our software, the tournament site, the posting of results, the support, we charge $1 per archer that shoots. So that is our fee for the event, and that's mailed to us or paid by credit card after your event's over with. So you don't have to pay for anything up front or anything, but once your event's over, it is $1 per archer.
And it's $1 per score, so if you have a team that doesn't show up, you don't get charged for them. So you don't get charged
Right.
for registrations unless you don't upload your scores, and then we charge for the amount of registered.
Make sense? All right. All right, Chip's turn to talk for a little bit about the new Nas App.
So hopefully I don't confuse the issue with throwing the app in as an option. So the Nas App is brand new. We launched it in the spring. Used it for the national. It was an option for the national virtual tournament. It's available both Android and Apple. It's right now, as of today, anybody can use it for a virtual tournament. So it's an option the coach can go in there and actually elect to use the app instead of manually keying the scores in. Probably sometime in August, it'll show up as an option for a land-based tournament. And it's an alternative to using the scanner. So that when you go to set up a tournament, there will be an option if you want to use a scanner or do you want to use the app to enter scores. For the land-based or any tournament using the app, you don't need the NAS Pro download. There's nothing to download. You don't need Microsoft Access. You don't need a scanner. The way it works is if it's a virtual tournament, the coach, within their registration, they enter the range scoring officials. They enter whoever's going to be the adult actually keying the scores into the app. And what that does is it generates PIN codes for each scorer that will unlock the scoring module of the app. And also we can track who entered which score that way. And on that handout, so I handed out a scorecard. That scorecard you can print either for virtual or for when we offer it for land-based for the app. That's a printable scorecard. It doesn't work with the scanner, but it's something that you can give the kids and they can score on it. And then you can enter the scores after they bubble and they agree that their scores are correct. The adult at the target can look at that and enter the 5 arrows into the app and get that into the system that way. The reason why we did a land-based tournament in the spring using the app, kind of a pilot, and at that time we were having the adults actually, the kids were using scorecards, but we had the actual adults actually looking at the arrows, keying in the values. But we found that with 2 kids at a target, it got confusing for the adult to know, differentiate which arrows, which kids, and it was really slow. So we developed this printable scorecard. You can print it for virtual from the registration, or if it's a land-based, the tournament administrator can print it. It's got every kid's name on. There's one for each kid. It'll have their flight on there also. So you can print those out. You can fold them in half and put them on a clipboard. So there's 2 at a clipboard, and the kids can actually score just like a tournament that's using the scanner. Same protocol. Only after they go in and they check the box that they agree, the adult would actually go and look at it, key in the arrow scores into the app, and they're done. There's no scanning part of it.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
So
you did that method and two archers fill in the papers for their scores, their sheet of paper for their scores, and I'm in person with the app on my phone, and I type the scores in, do I have to show the archers what I put on the app and let them verify that, or are the archers assuming the adults?
Well,
I mean, errors can still occur there.
right. I would recommend, that's what, when I was doing it, I would show that, I would put the arrow scores in, and it'll, and then show them the app and say, is this correct?
So it'll show all 5 arrows.
It'll show all 5 arrows, and then I save it. There's not anything, a safeguard, there's no way for that to know that they did that step.
Okay.
If an arrow score is keyed in incorrectly, during the tournament, the app score can go in there and change the end. If they realize, hey, I keyed in this arrow incorrectly, they can go back in and change that particular end, the 5 arrows. Now, the system will log it, so it will know that there was a change made, what the values were before and after. So if there's ever a question, you can go back in and look at that history. Once all 6 ends have been entered and a total scores, that score is locked. And you can't change scores from the app from that point. If something has to be changed after that final score is entered, the administrator can unlock that scorecard. It's back on now. The administrator can unlock the scorecard, and then the app you can go back in and change it. But that's a process. We don't want, once that kid walks away from the target, we don't want anybody to be able to change the score from the app unless the administrator knows. And in the case of a virtual tournament, the coach can unlock the scorecard.
Is it best practice using that method to score after each round, or take the sheets like a traditional and score them all in the next flight?
So it's so new, I don't know if there's a best practice. My opinion, it would be better to do it at the target. That way you can show the kid each target and make sure they look at that 5 arrows. But you could, after the flight's over, you could go, the adult can take the app and key in each end. But.
So no more pictures?
So the option's still there, but for nationals, I guess you used it for nationals, okay. What we found is the picture was kind of an issue, because if you had a slow connection, it was slow to upload the picture. Yeah.
So I would speak to you, because we all used it at nationals, is I would not let them pull arrows until they see what you scored.
Yeah.
So then you need an adult at every target to do that, basically?
That would be the best option.
Well, yeah, which is not feasible really, but
that would keep the tournament moving faster. Now,
if you had enough adults, yeah.
What we did is assign an adult to every 3 targets. It took a little longer, but it worked.
So what I'm hoping, did you all use scorecards?
We did. We also made them score on scorecard.
Okay. Did the adult score based on what was on the scorecard, or did they look at the arrows?
We looked at the arrows.
Okay.
The pictures is the only thing that slowed us down. It was
The pictures, okay. So the picture is a option that we can turn on and off, and it's turned on for an integrity check. And the pictures we got were great. We could look at those pictures and we could score that in. And most, there may be a case where it's on the line, it may not. But it may be an issue going forward, so I don't know if we'll use it again.
we had a problem, like you said, with the connection, and it would act like it went through, and then all of a sudden ask for another picture, and we already told them the score, so if we took a picture of the scorecard, we didn't know what else to do.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And it may turn out that we had a suggestion the other day that you only take a picture if it's above a certain score, if it's a 45 or above or something like that. And that wouldn't be, you wouldn't be taking that many pictures in that case. So that's an option that may or may not be. Certainly if you do your own tournament, you have control over that, and you can elect not to use that feature.
Yeah, quick question. So I'm not familiar with scoring using the app at the tournament itself, but there's a different device for every target? Is that what
Well, we just have in terms I've done, the scorer just uses their phone. They download the app, they put their PIN codes in, and they're scoring on their phone. You could have iPads or phones, provided that they use if you wanted to, but you don't have to.
You're going to try it here in a minute, but basically you can score as many kids as you want that flight. You know, you can have 1 target, 2 target, and you just add all of those in there. And it works really cool because after the first time you walk down there, first time it takes you a few minutes to find each kid's name and select them. But the next time you go down, it's just those kids on your list in the same order that you scored them the first time. So they're there. And when I was using it, I could score them. We only had 1 kid per target, so it made it easier. But I could score the first kid while I was walking toward the target. So by the time I got there, I'd already saw it and said, "Is this right?" And just moved. It was extremely fast. And 1 kid per target. 2 kids makes it harder because obviously distinguishing those there. Very efficient.
So yeah, there's a list, you'll add the kids you're scoring, so you have a smaller list that you can just go back to each end, so.
I was gonna make 2 suggestions if you've never used it. The first one is, if you assign targets, you can already have those kids pulled up. But the other thing I was gonna suggest is that it wasn't very clear, like when we were reading the directions for nationals, is if whoever's gonna score kids from your team, they have to have a separate pin for your team. Like, just because you add them doesn't mean that they automatically pull up.
And that's a virtual tournament.
Okay.
That's the way the virtual works.
Okay, yeah. That took a little while, but
Right.
we didn't realize how that worked.
If you're doing a land-based tournament using it, the pin codes unlock every kid in the tournament for every official, so, yeah. But,
Yeah, I assigned certain kids, I assigned my officials to certain targets, and I assigned the kids to the targets, so my officials knew they were scoring at a time, and so they had them already in their phones, and it worked really well. Each one of my officials had 4 targets assigned to them,
Yeah.
and so, like you said, the thing that took the longest were uploading the pictures.
yeah.
And so you had to make sure you had good Wi-Fi, and even though we got a brand new building, the Wi-Fi has been horrible in our building, and that was the biggest thing. It's really cool. I mean, it works. It's really cool. It is.
The picture is the common
Yeah.
complaint about it so far. So, and like I said, that we may, I don't know, hopefully nationals won't be virtual next year, we'll be in person, but, yeah, I don't know if we would use that feature again, unless it was a case, like I said, in certain score levels, you take a picture or something like that, so.
One of the cool things was at the end of the last flight, you showed the kid your score.
Yeah,
You said okay, and I said you had a 272. This one kid said that's sick. Later found out that means good.
Any other questions? So,
Okay, I do have one. It says app is free to download and use, but
Right.
$1 is still charged for use of the online site and software.
right, so every tournament we host, it costs you $1
Per person.
per score that's sent into the system. So whether or not you use the app, or use virtual, or the coach enters them manually, or you use the scanner, it's always $1 per archer is the fee we charge. And then if you're hosting a land-based tournament, you can charge whatever you want,
Okay.
and then you keep the rest, is the way it works.
Now, on the app one, how is it still, you want a credit card or immediately on when it's over, or are you?
We said,
Yeah, I mean, it's the same option as using the scanner, so you can go on the website, pay by credit card, or mail a check in after the fact.
sorry, I have one more question.
Sure.
When, using the app for, like a land-based tournament, that we're hosting, will the scores be posted automatically?
There's still a process, at least right now, that you would go into the tournament administrator and post them after each flight.
So you could do it after each flight then?
Yeah, you could
That's
after
what
each
I
flight.
wanted to- Okay, that's it.
Yeah, it doesn't, it's not, the system's not smart enough to know, okay, all the kids have finished in
I
that
just
flight.
didn't know if we had to wait, I know why y'all have nationals, I just wanted to make sure you didn't have to wait for the whole tournament. So.
Yeah, and that was because it's virtual, and that's typically how we do virtual. Land-based, yeah, you can host every flight, you
Right,
can, yeah,
that's what we do with the scanner, okay.
yeah, so.
And you support the hybrid also, right? Or just
So-
the other?
Not yet, but I think it'll become an option for the hybrid, instead of using a scorecard or manually keying the scores through a spreadsheet. I think that probably after the first of the year, it'll be an option if you do a hybrid land-based, to where your one site can use the scanner and then the virtual sites can use the app. is probably,
So if I'm gonna do a hybrid, or I'm participating in a hybrid, can I shouldn't be using the app to score my stuff, or?
If the whole tournament, if the host site is using the app also,
Okay.
then the satellite site can.
So whatever the host is using is the way we need to go. Okay, so
Correct.
verify with the host.
Correct.
yes, right now, but it may become a case where a hybrid, the host could use the scanner, but the hybrid location uses the app. That may become an option, it's not yet. I know we've got, that's why I say I'm trying not to make it confusing, because there's more options now, but,
So
yeah.
if I'm doing virtual and I'm sending my stuff off to the host person.
Right.
I'm not the one responsible for sending the dollar check for my.
Correct.
Right, it's the host.
That's all host stuff, okay.
Unless it's a true virtual tournament and there's not a host necessarily, then you would pay, yeah. But you're still, if you're not hosting the tournament, you still actually pay the host, so.
And we had the question yesterday about if you're hosting a land-based tournament and you've got a hybrid school, so how to get the money from them or how to make sure they pay you for the fees. What we recommend is you close registration down earlier than normal, and then that host, they have to pay you before you will even accept their scores. Does that make sense? So I'm out here, this satellite school going to send my scores in. If you don't send the money first, you don't get to enter your scores into the tournament. That way you make sure you get paid, because that has been an issue. Some of the locations is they'll upload scores and then they can't get the pay for that. And obviously, it's a great way to fund your program, right? But if they won't send you the funds for it, then you don't want to spend a lot of time trying to collect those.
So, I'm sorry, how early were they closing? Because I'm thinking POs, if you're paying by a PO from a school.
Right, well, as far as the PO, as soon as they register their kids, they know what the PO needs to be made for. They can do that immediately. So that can be done, that process can start before the event even starts. But, a lot of people running local tournaments, they'll close the registration on Thursday and then start shooting on Friday. They go as late as possible. But if you want to collect that money, you probably need at least a week before that to get those funds in.
Do you have another question?
Yeah, I'm just saying, if the app becomes like the primary method of scoring, will it make the scanner obsolete?
I don't think, if you've got a scanner, I think you'll probably continue to use it because it's a very fast way to score, a very accurate way to score. I think for small local tournaments, the app is going to be a great way for the school that doesn't have a scanner to host a tournament without having that cost of buying it, so.
Can you talk about looking at the tech to take the next step, where you take a picture of the school department, I guess, and it scores it?
No, we've talked about it, but I'm not sure we have the expertise to do that. Maybe something we experiment with later on. We'd love to just take a picture of the target, scan it, and score it somehow, but possibly. We may be able to come up with a paper form that we can take a picture of.
So you're talking about something like a zip grade app, where you just. Okay.
Yeah.
That I understand.
It's at the time, yeah, we've thought about it. Who knows, maybe one of these days. Yeah.
Now, if I want to figure out how to use this app, and I'm playing around, and I'm having my shooters just go ahead and shoot that we're doing the local tournament, can I use this I'm not sending something that scores to anybody, but can I use it to actually practice entering in what they shot and seeing the end of the practice pay on that?
So, there's just a basic scorecard on the app. It's a little bit different because you don't have to pick a kid that's in the tournament, but there's a scorecard that's very similar. That's just just to use it and key in the scores. Yeah, you can practice it. So the handouts that you picked up, one of them was that printable scorecard that you can print from the website. The other is instructions. It's actually the virtual tournament instructions for using the app. There are pin codes at the bottom of the instruction sheet. So what we were hoping you guys would do is actually download the app and log and go in and use those PIN codes and see how it works if you've not used it before. You can download it, just go to your app store, search NAS or NAS portal, then you can download it. Since we're doing a session right after this one, those PIN codes will only work while we're in here. So if you're wanting to try it, go ahead and download it now. You don't have to put all 6 ends in if you don't want to, but that'll give you a good idea of how it works.
I have a question. It's related to the app, but it's a little different from what you're talking about. So we've noticed with the app that once parents find out that you have it and you register for a land-based tournament, they can see what you registered for.
I think we fixed that.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a,
When I play with teams and I move my kids from the top team to
Right.
the bottom and the parents start complaining at me,
Yeah, that was early on, and that was something we missed.
Okay.
It wasn't supposed, I'll go back and verify. That's one of the things that we fixed
okay.
sometime in the spring. So
Yeah, I had an issue with that.
If anybody has any trouble, raise your hand, we'll be glad to come help you right now. We're gonna give you a couple minutes to work through this process.
So the app is more than just scoring. Also, like I said, the parents can download it. You can find tournaments. You can track your score. It'll send notifications if you follow an archer or school whenever a score is updated. So it's something the parents and kids will be using a lot also.
You don't register, so here we go.
Yeah, my archers usually just,
And we're going to put more information on the website about the different options when you would use the app with the tournament, that sort of thing. Because right now, like I said, as of today, it's available for virtual tournaments. But sometime in August, once I get the streams ready, it'll be available for tournaments this fall.
my wife is
Yeah, this app is going to evolve over time. Like I said, we just launched it back in the early spring. So it'll continue to have features added to it. Just the scorecard. Yeah, I'll look at that. We can probably do that. That way you can decide if you want to use it or not. Yeah, or have your scores. Yeah.
So download this app, I can come in, I can do automatic come in.
Yeah, so as a VAI, if you log into the app, yeah, it's got for one, we're going to probably push reminders out there to do reporting, but yeah, you can, all it does is take you to the website and logs you in. So it's the same as going to the website, but yeah, it is a way to get there.
Everybody added scores, kinda? Got that far? Anybody put in all 10s? Come on, Rob, what'd you put in? 290. There you go.
Right.
That's typical for
I have a question. How do you, if you're going to use the app, how do you set up a tournament? You go to NAStournaments.org, just like any other tournament. Right. Go to the website. Yeah, that's just for scoring. So, and then you would go through the same setup forms, but there's going to be options for a land-based tournament for the app there. So. Well, so for the land-based tournament, you as the tournament host would go in and add the scoring officials, and you would get the PIN codes there. And there's a printout if you want to print it out so that you can hand them out to it. And it should email, you put an email address in for the score, it'll send them an email with their PIN codes. And they won't work until the tournament starts, and they won't work after the tournament is over. Each score, the PIN codes are unique to the person and the tournament.
that'll be the number just for that tournament.
So, you're on the website. You have to download.
You have it.
Oh, you must have clicked on the website. So if you turn this morning, then you click on the device.
They have one you can just always go to after everything. But it's separately turned together. You're not sure. Every arch. I had a wrong started. Started instead of going back. You just make it new, so they have like 4 shooter numbers for every individual. They weren't able to get accurate averages.
So if all 6 hands have been submitted, then it's washed. So what that brings us to go to the tournament host, you have to go on the web and on the tournament tracker and unlock that kid's score. And then when it doesn't wipe it out, it just, in some cases, it's just on one arrow. Right. It would be. In that case, yeah, so once you unlock it, then the range will go back and change them as they go. I may add a clear, that's a good idea, I may add a clear function to it. Probably ask you to do after you started the one year. So yeah, that's, now if you're scoring 2 kids and you put the strong scores in, switch it to, you can go ahead and fix it. I got 6, all 6 kids haven't been submitted. Yeah, once the milestone's done, it's locked until it starts to turn on.
It's been 12 years of life. 12, 13 years into that other.
Go to the website, the administrator goes to the website. So, the administrator goes to the website, the administrator unlock it, and then you go back to the
Scoring for every archer, you were scoring.
It will be. If you elect to have your land-based tournament, you have, there's others bugging the screen. Because you don't use Nas Pro that way. You know, you print rosters from the website, you print scorecards. You don't need access. You don't need Nas Pro. You don't have to show them download. Same setup on this, there'll be an option there. Are you going to use the scanner or are you going to use that? That's what I do, yeah. That's the intention of it. So she asked a question, so once you enter all 5 arrows, it's got a review screen. That's where I would show the kid, let him look at the phone and say, is this correct? And they say yes, then you submit.
Did everybody that wanted to get a chance to try it? Yeah, good with it? All right.
Now we do have an outdoor.
Any other questions about the app?
Yeah, and archery. So that's cool when we get that done.
Ready? Yeah.
I was like, it's their time.
All right, that was the first part of our presentation on how the tournament site basically works. This part of the presentation is more on if you are hosting a tournament, and a lot of this is based on a land-based tournament, problems you may encounter and the solution for those. One of the first things I want you to know is if you are hosting a tournament, you can go to nastournaments.org website, click on in the black bar at the top, there's a software button. Click that software button, go to the NAS software section, download the user guide. It's the first link on that page. It's a step-by-step guide to get you through the entire process. The first 2 things on there is my phone number and Chip's phone number. Okay? As soon as you get that, scratch my phone number out and always call Chip. Okay? That's the first thing you need to know there. So, actually, not Chip.
Call after if
Yeah.
it's later, if you were
If you go to nastournaments.org, click on the software tab. There's your street. And once you do that, there's options, and one of them is NAS software, and then it says user guide right there in the title at that point, and it's a downloadable PDF. But seriously, Chip built all of the web stuff that you see here. And like I said, he's good at what he does. So if you have exactly. If you have a question on how to use something on the website, the best thing to do is to try him first. I know a lot of the answers, but he knows a lot more than I do about it. So if you can't get in touch with him, call me. If it's a question on tournament day, you're trying to use the software and there's a glitch or something there. Anybody here called me already on a Saturday? Yeah? Okay, good. So, worst time is obviously late October and November. My deer stand is way down in the creek bottom, and I get 3G down there if that tells you anything. So it's not, but I will answer unless there's a great big one looking at me. So you're pretty safe most of the time. But between the two of us, you shouldn't have any problems getting in touch with one of us. On a busy weekend during January, February, we may have 100 of these going around the country at the same time. And on a busy day, I'll get 15 phone calls. So 100 tournaments, 15 phone calls, not a bad deal. So that's kind of it usually. And usually if I hear from you once, I'm going to hear from you 2 or 3 times. So that's kind of, but once you've done a couple, Rob, it's not bad. You kind of get through it. So, and there's absolutely no one so far when I see that number, I go, oh my goodness, I don't do that with anybody. So, all right. If a school is trying to register and said it won't let me register, well, the main reason is they haven't done the in-school commitment. There's a little button when it pops up and says, you can't register to this until you've committed to teaching in-school lessons for this year. As you know, NASP has a 10-hour requirement that you present in-school lessons before you're eligible to compete in tournaments. All they have to do, click that button and say, yep, I'm going to teach it, and then they can go back in and register. Okay, very common. We get that question a lot. Cannot add a division or an archer. We have an organization table, an org table that's got every single school in it. And on that school, we've got the low grade that attends that school and the highest grade that attends that school. If that's not right for your school, it may say it's only got 4 or 5 is like the grades itself. It won't let you add a middle school division or a middle school archer or a high school division or a high school archer if it's incorrect. If it is incorrect, you need to contact your state coordinator. Their job at that point is to contact the school and verify the grades that really are enrolled there and edit that record if it needs to be edited. Okay? So if you're trying to do this on a Saturday, that kid's probably not going to get to shoot. So, yes?
Okay, I'm sorry to ask this because I'm reading like a little bit ahead to make sure I can answer this.
We'll answer a question. Go ahead.
So we have a kid, this has happened a couple times, and I've called, and so we've gone all season. We have our 6th graders are not in the same building as the 7th and 8th grade, but we're all on the same campus.
Yep.
So they're technically, from my understanding, can compete all together on one team, 6, 7, and 8, because we're all the same campus.
Exactly right. They can.
But once in a while, like we went out to Turtle Beach, again, we went all season on an issue. There was one girl, and it was only on, I believe, the 3D side, that we had to kick her off the team and register her separately and transfer her to the elementary team just to get her to shoot out there.
Right. And so the way that works is the rules say that if a division is split across different schools, they can join that team, that divisional team there. Okay. If the group is an individual group, not a team group, they have to shoot for their school because. So that 6th grader can't shoot in an individual group for that middle school. Does that make sense? They have to shoot for the school they attend. They can join the team for the other one, but if they're shooting as an individual, they have to represent their school.
Okay.
So that probably was the issue if you haven't had a problem all season. Okay? Cannot add a division. So when a tournament host posts a tournament, they list the divisions they want to have. Most of the time they list elementary, middle, and high and individual group. Sometimes they don't have an individual group. Sometimes they don't have an elementary group. So check with the tournament host. That would be the other reason you couldn't add a division is because they're not allowing it for their event. Same thing, anybody do shooting up, not the bad kind of shooting up, the good kind of shooting up. Anybody so shooting up is when kids from a younger grade get to shoot up because you only have less than 150 schools or students enrolled in that school. You can shoot up. There's a flag on your org record that says you can shoot up for middle school or shoot up for high school. If it's not set, you can't do it. Even if you're eligible for it, you can't do it until that flag gets set. So you just contact your state coordinator. They verify enrollment numbers, and if you meet their criteria, they can change that flag. Unless you're in South Carolina. Anybody in South Carolina? They don't allow shooting up in South Carolina, period. So, all right. Cannot download. So if you're using a land-based software, when it's time, registration's closed, it's time to download your participant file. When you click that button to download it, sometimes it brings up errors. And what the errors usually are is Kendrick registered his school for the event, but he didn't pick flight times. Or he didn't assign his kid to those flight times. Those are all edits that you can either contact that coach that registered and reopen your registration and let them fix it. You can fix it for them. There's several different options, but you have to fix all of those errors before you pull that download. So once that download's done, then the download button once you fix the errors, the download button will pop up and you can download it at that point. But we get that call pretty often. About 1% of you, so if we had 1,200 tournaments last year, about 12 of you, for some reason, your labels do not line up on your printer. Okay? Did you raise your hand? Yeah. It's an issue with your print driver. It's what it is. You can try to go download a different print driver if you want to get all techie. I don't get that techie. Chip would do that because did you? You were able to edit it? She said she was able to change your margins and make it work. Yes?
We found that if you do a printer alignment on your printer, it fixes it every time.
Awesome.
So that's 3 different types of printers. So
that printer alignment. I'll remember that. Yeah. So my user recommendation is just move it to another printer or another computer with another printer, and that resolves it. I hate to tell somebody that, and it's usually not a big deal. But believe it or not, I've gotten a couple calls that we had one event in particular. The event started at 9 o'clock, and I got the call at 8:30 where the guy just pulled his participant download, getting ready for the event. So he didn't have much of a window to get it going. So a couple things there. We strongly recommend you get ready early for that. You have to test your scanner before that. You have to test your scanner before Saturday because Apperson, who supports their software and their firmware, does not have weekend hours. They do not have weekend support. We can help sometimes on some of it, but some of it we just say, sorry, we don't know what to do. So and I have a hard time saying I don't know what to do.
Also,
I make up stuff.
If you're using a school computer, it's likely you don't have permissions to install anything on that. So that's another reason you need to do it early in the week if you have to get your IT department involved. So.
Now, would the app take care of part of that problem, or are you still having to print labels?
No, with the app you do. Yeah, the app you don't have to use the PC. Everything is web based. Yeah, so you don't have a scanner. You don't even use a scanner for the app. So that
Well,
wouldn't be an
I'm
issue.
just saying that if you're doing this, you don't have an alternative PC or a printer, would the app take care of that?
Right. The scorecards like Chip handed out now are printed directly from that software with the name and stuff already on there. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, just a side note back on the app, be sure that you have Wi-Fi or internet access where you're shooting because right now that app only works if you've got internet. So we're planning on adding some offline capability to it, but it's not there yet. So if you don't have Wi-Fi or internet in your gym where you're going to shoot, the app's not going to work there. So.
If you can't get the NAS Pro software to open, most of the time it's because the copy of Microsoft Access you have isn't currently licensed. So you have to make sure it's a licensed copy. And if they don't have it, like we said before, Microsoft Office 365 has got you can download it for a month for $10. So it's not a huge expense anymore like it used to be. Some people, once they download their participant download in the Microsoft Access program, they can't find it. The default for Windows 10 is your downloads folder. So that's the first place you want to check. Some people actually don't know where they open NAS Pro and then they don't know where it is. There's another thing sometimes happens. I mean, some people aren't very PC literate, and I understand that because there's a lot of things I don't get. But if you ever open your NAS Pro program at the very bottom of the main menu, it says working folder. That tells you where the program is, and that tells you where almost everything goes that you're running while you're in there. So that's helpful too.
And in the user guide, we recommend you create a folder for each tournament you host and put everything in that folder. Likely on the desktop is the easiest place we find. That way you know where it's at, because if you don't do that, that's when we get the person that opens the wrong version. And they don't realize it.
Chip, how hard is it to have your school set up a separate Wi-Fi network? So it's not the same network as that the general public uses.
For your school.
Like, what if you're a tournament, like how hard is it to set up a separate network? So tournament folks can be on one network, spectators can be on the other.
Well, I mean, that'd be very difficult to bring your own network in. I mean, most schools have Wi-Fi if you can get access to it.
Yeah, the guest versus staff are two different setups and two different speeds.
I mean, you could bring you can make your phone a hotspot. If you wanted to do that, share it as a hotspot, and that would provide Wi-Fi.
Okay.
That would be the way you could bring your own network in. But you gotta make sure you've got a good data signal there, cell signal, for that to work.
Got a question right here?
No, okay. The light version then,
Uh-huh. Pardon?
the light version,
Uh-huh. It still exists. It's actually, we merged it into the NAS Pro program. So if we call it the free version, if you open the NAS Pro program in the top right corner, there's a free version instructions, and it tells you how you can use it for up to 300 kids, I think.
okay, because I just, like, my outdoor series class, so never gonna compete, like, through a season,
Mhm.
but I thought it'd be kind of cool if I can upload scores.
You can't upload them still. It only works local.
I can at least run the scanner, right?
Yeah, you can run the scanner and do that if you wanted to, yeah. And the only key to that is if it's something like that, it's great. But if you're at a tournament, even if there's only 50 kids in your tournament and you're using the light version, if it doesn't work for you, we don't provide support for that. Like I said, I've got 100 other tournaments going on a weekend or whatever, so it gets the lowest priority. It's email support only. So, but we currently still do have that free version out there.
How many, just curious, how many people would be interested in a practice module for the app to put scores in at practice?
Would you pay an annual fee for that? For the whole season? Would you pay $100 to be able to use that to track scores for your kids for the whole season? Okay.
If you can download it.
Yeah, I would guess so. It may be school, maybe it's per school or something like that, but other than that, we're just trying to figure it out now. We're not at that point yet. We're just trying to figure out, because anytime we do that, it requires extra support, it may require extra staff to do those kind of things, so.
And yeah, we don't want to build it if people aren't going to use it, so we're trying to gauge interest in that.
So you're saying that we ran scorecards, scanned them, and it would collect the data?
No, he's saying that your kids use their phones to use the app every single.
Use the app.
Yeah, just use the app.
If you're running it in practice, if you want them to record their.
Because we do the cards and then run them through the machine, and then when they go into the Excel file, I can just transfer them to another Excel file with their name.
Right, you give every kid a number and they've got that
Yeah,
number.
and
And,
you can just collect it that way.
It works that way too.
Yeah.
Would we be able to use the app without paying?
For
Like if you start charging $100 per year or whatever.
Right.
Like my thing is I don't like my kids have their phone to practice. So that, there's days that.
Well, you can see the assistant coaches, their parents, and they're doing it too.
What's the practice scorecard button that's on the app?
It's just, the practice scorecard is just on the app. It doesn't save anything to the server into your. If we built a practice module, and if they put in a score, it would save to where you could access it on the website.
I can use the practice scorecard just to track.
Yeah, you can use it, whatever you want to do.
We have our-
Just the regular standalone scorecard will be on the app.
But what he would build out, probably have more features into it, like you could see archer trending, you could click each archer and see how their practice scores are moving and that kind of stuff. Right, well, a lot of people do, some people don't have that ability, so. Microsoft, or Apperson has a slight glitch in its software, so when you're scanning, it's important you follow those tournament day instructions. The way it works is once you open the software for Apperson, it gives you a little green dot down in the bottom corner to let you know it's ready to start receiving scores. Once you see that dot, count to 10 before you start. If you start too quickly, it hasn't fully loaded and it won't load all of the scorecard values. So the way it works, you count to 10, scan one card, make sure every column has a number in it, and only when it does do you continue scanning. And you won't have any problems. If not, you'll call me, I'll walk you into deleting it out and rescanning and starting over. It's not bad if you got 10 cards, but if you got 700, you're not going to be too happy. So, duplicates when importing, you can read that as well as I can. Most of the time it's a kid who bubbled the wrong shooter number in, so you got to find the 2 cards that are duplicated and figure out which one's wrong, and there's an edit card screen to fix it. Same thing, I got a shooter number there. All right, let's go. We're running short on time. I'll move on to the next page. Already told you this, Apperson does not work weekends, so test everything beforehand. Chip, do you want to walk through this?
Well, there's
So, in the scoring room, when we scan cards, there's a couple things that we have found that if you do these steps, it's going to eliminate most of your errors. The big thing is, kids bubble cards wrong, or the coach may bubble it. They bubble a number wrong. So what we do, for one thing, we count the cards. So if you've got a small tournament, when those cards first come in the scoring room, if you've got 20 archers, if you count those cards, if you don't have 20, there's a card still floating around out there out on target. But then we scan the cards, and then the Apperson scanner shows a number, and the computer shows a number. We make sure those match up, because in the situation he just described, sometimes if you start too soon, the scanner it'll either record values incorrectly, and the NAS Pro will catch that, or it'll just skip over that first card. It won't include it in the data. You don't realize it unless those counts are off, then you can kind of tell. Then the last thing we do is we'll walk through, so the scanner prints on the scorecard, it'll print the shooter number that was bubbled. So we go through and look at that printed bubbled shooter number compared to what was on the label. And that'll catch the mis-bubbled shooter number. And that's going to save you lots of time down the road, because the system won't catch it. If they bubble a number that's an actual valid shooter number for another kid, and that kid hadn't shot, it won't alert you, because it doesn't realize it's wrong until later on, and the other kid's scorecard comes in and says, oh, there's a duplicate. At that point in time, you have to go look through all the cards to find which card was misbubbled. So score them, compare the shooter number that printed on the card from the scanner with the label, and that'll save you a lot of trouble. And then also, we recommend that after each flight, when you import the scores into NAS Pro, after you've scanned, you make a backup. You close NAS Pro, close the Access database, make a copy of it to a USB drive, to a OneDrive drive or Dropbox folder or something that gets backed up. Because it's rare, but it happens every year. We have somebody call and their computer crashes for whatever reason.
I got it last year. I got somebody call me Saturday afternoon about 4 o'clock. They had a power surge in the building, and it killed their computer, and they didn't make backups.
Yeah.
And all I could say was, I'm sorry.
And
I don't like that.
You can't just go back and re-download because you've made changes. You added archers, you made substitutions. You would have to remake all those changes in that order to get the shooter numbers to match up. So if you just take the time, just close, as soon as you import, you've uploaded scores to NAS Pro, close down the Access program, make a backup of it somewhere. I use Dropbox on the computer, because that way I can just copy it in there. Actually, I just keep the NAS Pro in my Dropbox, and then it's backing up. But you have to close the database for Dropbox to make that backup automatically. So if you leave NAS Pro on all day long, it's not getting a backup copy. So can you run the Bullseye entry tournament at the same time? You can. And you can even do it on the same computer. So what you would do is you would create a folder for each tournament, make sure that you put all the files for the Bullseye tournament in the correct folder in the 3D. and make sure when you're importing and scanning that you know where you're at. We actually recommend using 2 computers if you can. It just makes it simpler. But that is, if you're confident with your file management and you've got all your files, you know which version of NAS Pro you've got open at the time, you can certainly do that. And Patrick built in, if you notice, the shooter numbers for Bullseye tournaments start with a 1. Shooter numbers for 3D start with 5. So if you happen to mix in the cards from one of the other tournaments, the NAS Pro will catch it because it's going to say it's an invalid shooter number. And can you add archers on site at the Mint? Yeah. You can add them in NAS Pro. After you've downloaded, you can start adding and making substitutions. You can even add other schools. But that, in the case of the school, they had to have completed their in-school commitment, or NAS Pro won't let you add them even on site. You would have to have that school go back to the website, make the commitment, re-download the school file, and then you can add them to NAS Pro at the tournament.
And make sure if somebody's adding a kid at the tournament, it has to be a BAI associated with that school for tournament purposes. I've seen it happen many times where mom and dad show up and sign little Johnny up on site for the tournament, and the tournament host or we get a call on Monday saying, why did you let this kid shoot? We suspended him from school 3 days ago, or we dropped him from the team. So you have to make sure that there's someone in authority from that school giving permission for that kid to shoot, or it will eventually burn you. You'll hear about it. So.
And one way you can do that is have them download the NAS app and sign into it, because in the NAS app, once you're signed into it, there's a credentials screen, and it'll show what you're, basically if you're an active BAI for one thing, but also which schools you're associated with for tournament purposes. So you can have them log into that and then show you on their app, and they can prove that they're an authority for that school to add for tournament registrations. Last question, can you run a non-NAS tournament using NAStournaments.org? No, but we're building a new, it's been out there for a while, it's not finished, it's still not a mature website, I guess you'd say. It's called aeroscores.com, and that website is going to be able to support any kind of archery tournament, whether it be a NAS style tournament for alumni or parents, it's very similar. Or it could be a totally different kind of event, with different target values, number of arrows, that sort of thing. So aeroscores.com is out there. We're hoping to be able to build a scoring app for it also, similar to what we built for NAS. There's a lot, if you want to use it, if you want to try it, I'm still manually setting up tournaments. We don't have the online setup for them, but you can email me. On the website, there's a support email address, or you can email the NAS tournament support, and I can walk you through and help you use that site if you want to try it.
It would be pretty cool. Imagine an outdoor 3D shoot, no cards, no anything else. All you got to do is take your phone. You shoot, you score your partner, and they score you. And on the app, you don't have to have anything else with you. So when it's raining, you don't have to worry about it as much and all that.